Hey guys, I'm Matt Lighty, and this is the quick overview of what build I'll be playing for the last Epic launch that is happening on the 21st. The build that I want to be playing is inspired by a few different people. I just want to give a shout out to this guy, Action RPG, for having a pretty good overview of this same kind of build. This guy, Majestic Multi Gaming, for having also kind of similar version of the build. There's probably like 20 of the people who made the similar versions of the build. Great minds kind of think alike, and I'm sure we're all within 5 points of each other. You know, everyone kind of comes to similar conclusions when it comes to certain builds, especially amongst prolific ARPG players, but a lot of these builds kind of get more honed in and narrowed. So the baseline is, in Last Epic, I am playing a Warlock. Now, a Warlock is an Acolyte. That's the base class. Warlock is one of the 3 subclasses. It's the newest one to be introduced amongst the Acolytes, and it focuses on chaotic kind of Lovecraftian casting, focusing heavily on curses, necrotic damage, damage over time, things like that. And the baseline for skills we'll be using kind of represents that in an array of ways. Now, if you don't know what lastepictools.com is, it's the baseline website that you should use for all things Last Epic, including loot filters, build planning, guides, resources, etc., unique tracking, whatever. I believe it's currently technically down because of, everything's hitting the fan until the game comes at the 21st. But one other fun feature about this website is after you have your build made or imported from someone else who's making a build, you can just hit this loot filter button, and it'll, following the steps, it'll auto-generate a loot filter containing all the type of items you'd like to get for the build. So all the items, high-valued items, late, mid, early game items, mid-campaign, early campaign. It has you totally covered with the total amount of resistances, affixes, prefix, suffixes, all the goodies. So fantastic feature. I hate having to fiddle with loot filters in RPGs, especially progressive ones. So ones like this in Last Epic are fantastic because it lets you augment them on the fly, but also this gives you a good baseline for the build. So if you're playing a Primalist, that is a Beast Hunter, and you want certain sets of things, you find a build, hit the loot filter button, makes your thing good. We're back to the Warlock. Let's actually talk about the build here. And the whole build revolves around an interesting function of auto-casting spells in not so much a loop, but more of a cascade. The word auto-casting is maybe a little bit generous in Last Epic when it comes to this. I'll explain why in a second. But the basic gameplay loop comes in a little... I made this little chart. It's very beautiful. It revolves around a chunk of skills that we'll go over in more detail in 2 seconds, but I just want to tell you exactly how it operates when I say the auto-casting function. So we use a skill called Chthonic Fissure that turns necrotic resistance into damage, along with another unique we use which turns necrotic resistance into a different form of defense. But the cascading spell function, the thing that makes it a one-button build, is when you cast Chthonic Fissure, it releases spirits, and there's a very high chance those spirits are then replaced by Chaos Bolt, and those spirits also apply a dot, which also applies a curse. Now, when Chaos Bolt triggers, it also has a way of triggering Rip Blood. It also applies a bunch of dots and also casts Bone Curse if the thing is cursed, which the spirits from Chthonic Fissure does. So, in turn, you cast Chthonic Fissure, it releases Chaos Bolts and Spirits that then have the Chaos Bolts release Rip Bloods and Bone Curses, letting this one spell equals 3 spells that do about 20 different things, making it a one-button build. Now let's go into more detail what the actual spells do. The base skills we use, Chthonic Fissure, and that auto-triggers Chaos Bolts, which then auto-trigger Bone Curse and Rip Blood, and then Profane Veils for defenses. So that's the baseline of our skill setup as we're walking around casting Chthonic Fissure, which opens up a fissure on the ground that goes from north to south for a character, and it does a bunch of damage, and it summons these spirits, and these spirits are then replaced by Chaos Bolts that then auto-trigger our Rip Blood and our Bone Curse. So we're basically pushing one button. It's a one-button build, very conducive towards my personal playstyle in RPGs. I kind of enjoy one-button builds that have a lot of depth to them. This is kind of one of those builds. The passive trees is just conducive towards this. It's just giving us more damage and stats. There's not a whole lot of things in the passive tree that are like revolutionary in form or function. It's just a bunch of damage and stats, and we start with the Acolyte a little bit again, getting things like intelligence, necrotic damage, ward, which is in Path of Exile terms energy shield, kind of. And then, yeah, we get res, we get dots, we get things like that on kill effects, life. Again, the passive tree in Last Epoch is kind of just stats, minor augmentations. For the most part, it's just stats and applying different multipliers, etc. And more spell damage per curses, more damage per dots on the enemy, etc. That sort of thing. So nothing too flagrant there for sort of build efficacy, but the skills is where it gets interesting. Okay, so Chthonic Fissure, we talked about it opening up portals in the ground and then triggering spells. This is where it comes into it, is Chaotic Rupture. Now, what Rupture does is it takes the spirits that are summoned by the fissure, so little spooky ghoulies that come out, and it replaces a portion of them, 60%, which I believe you can scale up higher eventually, with Chaotic Bolts. So that gets our free Chaotic Bolt triggering. All right, so that's going to give us free Chaotic Bolts. And most of the things here are just making our fissures better, more fissures, more efficient fissures, more damage, more spirit frequency, that sort of stuff. So we're auto-triggering Chaotic Bolts. Now, what does that do? Our Chaotic Bolts have more damage. They do dots. Again, a lot of our build is dot-based. But the interesting part is these two parts here. Your Chaos Bolts have a chance per intelligence to cast Rip Blood at target enemies, and it can only occur 3 times a second. There's no point to get a cast speed in a way more than that, because where that just becomes a dead stat effectively for triggering free Rip Bloods. 1% chance to occur per int. So if we look at over here, our intelligence, if we're over 100 int, that's 100% chance to trigger. By that logic, fantastic. That's what we'd like to have. That way it also means we can constrain our cast speed to an appropriate amount. We're not over-triggering. Now, Chaos Bolts hit against cursed enemies, cast Bone Curse. Well, everything we're going to be hitting is cursed because of the way we're doing things, so we're totally covered when it comes to that. Now, we allow to have things like blood splatter. They do more damage. They do more debuffs, and we just basically want to maximize what we're triggering. You just got to be careful because some things don't change their functionality when it comes to auto-triggered effects. We can't have it so. There's summoning bone guards, I believe, doesn't work, or certain things like this don't exactly trigger because we're so deep in the trigger chain it only applies to certain things. Converting the damage from Bone Curse to Necrotic, again, staying on theme with damage-wise there. So again, the whole point of it is the build play style and the gameplay loop is walking around casting Chthonic Fissure, which then triggers Chaos Bolts, which then triggers Rip Bloods and Bone Curses, and then Profane Bloom is just a defensive thing because we don't want to just die all the time. So because dying, again, feels kind of bad. So we channel ourselves with Profane Bloom, giving us a chance to dodge, and we take reduced damage and reduced ailment, I believe, amongst other things. So it's just like a defensive layer. It's just kind of like a little bit of an oh shit button. But yeah, it also gives us deals necrotic damage around us and that sort of stuff. So it's pretty cool for that. While leveling, you could always take a transplant, which is a movement skill. Also, that gives you some life back, like a teleport. So that's really great. But until then, I would, when we get to the end game, swap to like a defensive thing. But that's the basis of the build. So we're investing into a lot of things like necrotic resistance. You may be saying, why the hell do I want necrotic resistance if I'm trying to have it, do damage per se? Well, we have this fun thing called Twisted Waves, which is Torment deals more damage, multiplicative per uncapped necrotic resistance. Uncapped means overcapped, effectively, per necrotic resistance. The more necrotic resistance we have, the more dot damage we do. And same thing with this, kind of comes to unique choice. We have this unique helmet, Bone Claimer Barboot. This is a cool helmet that actually gives us a 1 ward per second per 3% necrotic resistance. So this gives us a little ES regen, basically, ward regen. The rest of the gear choices are pretty standard, I guess. There's nothing too fancy. Things that give ward when damaged, triggering mark on death on hit. This is a curse spell. This auto triggers our Bone Curse, which triggers our blood thing. So getting stuff like that to auto trigger curses is great. Any curse on hit effect. Chance of orbs to convert into a ward. So you get this ward back. Spoon's great. Ladle's great. It just gives you a bunch of application on hits. Love it, love it, love it. And then the rest of the gear is basically just like, necrotic damage, necrotic resistances, intelligence. These are the sort of things we want. Cast speed. And again, these are all represented in the filter. So once you get the filter going, you'll see it starts to show exactly what you want and where. It'll have all the bases we want. So armor resistance, looking for res, necrotic, that sort of stuff. For leveling, we're just leveling with like dot sort of stuff. Nothing more than just manually casting Rip Blood or Chaos Bolts or Bone Curse. You just kind of just get to the level where you start getting Chthonic Fissure up and running and start auto-triggering things in concession. And once that int gets high enough, once that necrotic res gets high enough, or damage gets high enough, or auto-triggers get high enough, once we get our mark hit curse effect, we start triggering the bone curses. That sort of thing, but that's the gist of my build. There's a lot of different variations of Warlock you can transition into. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I won't be able to answer them too fully until I start messing around with stuff. The baseline of the build is kind of set in stone, but I'll be messing around with a lot of things and functions as I progress. I'll be streaming the entirety of Wednesday through Saturday. Pretty much when I'm not asleep, I'll be live streaming, progressing the build. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them live. Might be easier to relay information as I progress. And that's it. Hopefully you enjoy Last Epoch. If you want to purchase it, in the About section of my Twitch channel, there's actually a Nexus.gg thing. If you click that, you could see what I have for sale in the Nexus store, one of which is Last Epoch. There's a variety of items that are on sale for it, and it's currently $35 and coming out tomorrow. Doing this does directly support me, so feel free to do that if you want to. Otherwise, you could buy it from any other place you want to. That is okay too. But yeah, that's basically it. That's the build. It's you know, cascading Chthonic Fissure into Chaos Bolts, which then triggers our Rip Blood and our Bone Curse, triggering a bevy of dots and curses and cool effects. And it should be a lot of fun. I hope to see you guys in stream. Hope to see you playing the game. If not, you'll get progress videos and live streams from me and my build as the streams, you know, progress throughout the week. And that's it. Have fun. I'll see you guys on stream. If not, I'll catch you in the videos. I'm Mathew Lighty. Enjoy your time in Last Epoch. Bye-bye.